All right, and of course, to our discussion now, let's just pause a little bit on the stories and focus on the discussion. Remember, today we said we'll be focusing on the frontline workers who are actually, covering COVID-19, and we'll be talking to journalists, and of course, we also have psychologists, with us to just help us, understand what is happening, and of course, how people can cope with the same, and of course, in studio, we have our senior political, reporter, and of course, he's also a health reporter at the moment, and that is Jeff Kayemba. He is our, senior reporter at Every TV. Kayemba, thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for joining us. And of course, we also have Dr. Charity Waithima, who is a clinical psychologist. We also have Dr. Frida Kameti, again, who is a psychologist. We also have Victor Bwire, who is Programs Manager at the Media Council, of Kenya. And of course, we also have Thuku Kariuki, who is a journalist. Thank you very much for joining us, all of you. I hope that you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We hope that you can hear me, but let's just start with Kayemba, and then I'll get to you guys in a while. So Kayemba, we have been covering, have covered a little bit of COVID-19, but you've been covering cases of COVID-19 here in the country. First of all, let me just ask, how are you? We can just start with that. How are you?
Okay, thank you so much. Just as you had actually indicated, I'm Jeff Kayemba. I do cover politics and also recently I was actually some of the health matters in the country. And then it is not actually an easy task. And I can even recall some of the information that we are given by Victor Bwire by the time he was actually training us, that at times some stories, they're not actually about life and death. Your safety matters most. And in the current situation, the life of a journalist matters a lot.
A lot, yeah.
So just as the last week we did, even yesterday, the President Uhuru Kenyatta did say that this is a disease or a virus that actually doesn't care whether you are rich, poor, or whichever background. It is upon you to make sure that you do adhere to all the protective measures to actually survive in the society. And back to this issue, maybe as of being a journalist, you just have to take the proper measures. Because this disease doesn't know that indeed you are a journalist, that okay, it will have to spare because you are informing the members of the public. So you just have to take precaution. Last time you realized that before the media council actually had to come in to intervene about the journalists actually converging, about hundreds of journalists actually converging at Afya House, at Arambe House in the name of covering. It was actually hectic. Particularly maintaining the social
distancing. It's very difficult. It's very difficult,
until they had to come up the okay, we shall have about 5 media houses covering this. However, we did also protest as Ebro as to why we were not
as well.
But at least they came to our call and were part of the team. Though we had to ensure that we do adhere to the proper measures that the proper guidelines that you were given to adhere to.
Exactly. And I know that aspect of, as a journalist, of course, physically, yes, you have to ensure that you take all the precautions. Make sure you have a mask. Make sure you, social distance, which, it was difficult, the first time. Make sure that you put on, again, mask and just ensure that you take all the proper measures to ensure that you do not get infected. But then again, there's also another aspect of mental health, all right? Because every single day you're reporting, very many numbers of people who are actually being infected. There's that aspect of people losing their jobs. You have to report on the same. People are actually losing their lives from COVID-19. You also have to report on the same. So it can be a little bit overwhelming, I'm pretty sure, for so many people. And I want to engage Victor Bwire on that very shortly before we go for break. Victor, again, thank you very much for joining us. I remember that aspect of the Media Council, of course, coming in to ensure that at least make sure that journalists are protected. So how are we doing so far? There was that concern of, people crowding in one place or the other. The personal protective equipments for the journalists were not, available. How are we doing so far? Are you okay with the way things are going, with the way the journalists are actually covering the story?
Thank you. I mean, these are continuing things, and at one stage we might not give generalized statements. At one stage, people are doing well. At one stage, people are forgetting very basic things, and we are not blaming them, but we keep on reminding them that I mean, just 2 3 days ago, you saw CS Magoha shouting at journalists. I mean, even after we had given those guidelines and we have talked, I am aware even internally, media houses have editorial guidelines on how their journalists should be behaving. But like we are saying, we are not blaming anybody. This is the first time Corona is in Kenya, so we can't say we had a history. People had known how to report it. Obviously, there have been lapses here and there, especially broadcasters who have. Sometimes you must get the photos, you must get the audios. And while we are talking about Zoom and Skype and some of this technology is in Nairobi and Kisumu. I mean, look at a journalist in Samburu, look at a journalist in Wajir. Would he even afford some of these areas? Look at the report on internet accessibility in Kenya that has just been released by Communication Authority of Kenya. Look at the internet costs, the bundle costs and the equipment. How many of our radio stations, community radio stations, can afford some of these things? So it is a challenge that sometimes while we are telling journalists don't do one or two things, but it's impossible. I mean, even people have been told to work from home, and yes, they are gearing to working from home, but look at it in the sense of how many people afford that airtime to call sources, generate stories, get Wi-Fi, and file to the newsroom. Remember, many of the journalists are paid per article. So those are practical challenges that while, yes, it's easier to talk about it and say, keep away, keep at home, keep a social distance, but sometimes it becomes practically impossible to sometimes and adhere to some of these things. Look at the Kilifi cases, for example, where we had 14 journalists who had gone to cover a conference without necessarily knowing that some of the people in the crowd might have been exposed. Look at the Siaya case where journalists went, you remember the controversy around whether it was a positive or negative case and what, and guys went there without knowing and even had the governor talking and saying it's not. So then later it's established that it might have been. So some of those things are very practical challenges that we can't. I mean, sometimes you have to take your readers and viewers to Mbagadi, to Kenyatta, to see what is happening.
What is happening there?
So sometimes that pushes you to go. But what we are saying, the issue of protection is very important.
It's very important.
The issue of chasing suspects or victims does not arise. It's not a life and death, like Jeff said. That let's do stories, but aware that we must keep ourselves safe, we must keep our colleagues safe, and we must keep our families safe. And safety does not just mean safety. It does not just mean physical safety.
Yeah,
we're looking at your individual safety, your physical safety, and your social cycle safety must be.
All right.
It's a holistic thing.
Okay, and of course we also have psychologists with us as well to just help us understand how best then can we keep our sanity, if I can say so. But of course, before we talk to our psychologists, we also have Thuku Kariuki, who is a freelance journalist. Good morning, Thuku, if you can hear me. How is experience for you a little bit? All right. Okay. So let's just talk to our, Dr. Frida Kamiti, and then to just get to understand, because it's difficult for everybody. I mean, the journalists have to still work at the end of the day to ensure that they pass the information out there to the people, to the mass, and to the masses to inform them on what is happening. But then again, it can be overwhelming. I mean, Khaimba just told us, you know what, it's difficult. It's not easy, but every single day you have to report on these cases. You have to report on the number of people dying, the number of people being infected, number of people losing their jobs. It's a lot. So what do we do? Because at the end of the day, we have to keep working.
You're very right. This whole thing, of course, it's overwhelming for everybody and not just the frontline workers. I think because one, it wasn't necessarily planned, and just like any event that comes as a disaster, as a pandemic, like what you're going through, will always leave people unprepared and sometimes overwhelmed, causing a lot of issues like anxiety. So for the most part, what I've been advising people, and this is something we use especially in the healthcare field, is just assume to start with that everybody is infected.
Okay.
The minute you think that everybody is infected, then you will have an easier way to just keep yourself safe. And you're keeping yourself safe by One, if you're supposed to be isolating, you're isolating, you're staying at home. If you're out in public, you're actually wearing the proper protective equipment. So you have masks. If possible, you wear gloves. Then also teaching, providing education for these people who are in the front line, like journalists. They're not medical professionals, so they don't understand these things. So it will have been great to actually have some sort of training for them to understand what this is and how it's affecting people, even though we still kind of don't know much about it. And so that when they go out there, they're you can't really say they're 100% prepared, but they have an idea on
And a
how to
bit of
do
knowledge.
stuff.
Okay.
And also to equip them mentally, because like he said, like Victor said, they're overwhelmed because there's fear. There's fear they're going to infect their families. There's fear they're going to infect their colleagues. So just preparing them maybe by providing what we call a mental health first aid, just so that they know how to decompress when they're feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, and then of course let's just talk to Dr. Frida very briefly before we go on break. I mean Dr. Charity rather. What would you say as far as this whole aspect of journalists having to report and not forgetting that they're not superheroes, they're not superhumans. At the end of the day, they are humans, and of course they might feel overwhelmed, they might get affected in one way or the other from the same. Very briefly.
Okay, thank you. As Dr. Frida has said, and we've heard what Bwire is going through and many others, I think in this whole thing, one, as Dr. Frida has said, we recognize that they are human. And also for them, they have to recognize they are human. What does that mean? They need to have some form of psychosocial support, where even the journalists themselves, they can form a group or they can form groups where they can talk to each other. Sometimes it's just debriefing, and as they debrief, somebody is expressing the fear, somebody is expressing anxiety. Otherwise, because they all have different personalities, you might find that some who have the capacity to internalize and have so much in them that affects them, it can affect them. But when they know there is a secure place, people who cannot judge them, then somebody can easily be able to debrief and talk about how they are feeling, and that may some of them from the anxiety and the other issues that are coming up due to this COVID-19 situation we are in. Therefore, I would encourage media houses to encourage those journalists who are out there in the front line to be able to have what we would call a support group. The media house would also engage psychologists like us who can be able to debrief the journalists so that they are reassured of how normal they are and what they are feeling, and somebody can help them think beyond their fear during this very difficult time. Because again, they have to do their work, and also they need to be protected both physically and mentally.
Mentally as
Thank
well.
you.
All right. Dr. Charity, thank you very much for that. But please stay with us. Of course, we'll be coming back to you, Dr. Charity, Dr. Frida, and of course, Victor as well. Please stay on the line. We'll be coming to you shortly. We have to take a very short break. But of course, this conversation has to go on so that we, at the end of the day, ensure that we know and of course just help even so many journalists out there on how best we can cope during this difficult time. And of course we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you are at home watching us and of course you want to chime in, remember, like we said, we're live, so that means you can call in anytime. Or 791-478-990 is the number to call through, or send us a text message on 40920 if you are a nurse, if you are a doctor, if you are a police officer, a journalist watching us, and again you're struggling of course to just cope with the same. We're here, we have psychologists as well with us, and of course they'll be able to help us on the same. So let's take that very short break. We'll be right back with more. All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. This is New Day, and of course our today our focus rather is on how journalists are coping. And of course, let's just say frontline workers are coping with COVID-19. And of course, right now we're dealing with journalists. How are they coping? And of course, how best then can they work without necessarily feeling overwhelmed, and of course that a lot of pressure from the same. And of course we have Dr. Charity Waithima, who is a psychologist. We also have Dr. Frida Kamiti, who is a psychologist as well. We have, of course, our very own Jeff Kaemba, who is our senior reporter right here at Ebru TV. And of course we also have Victor Bwire, who is a programs manager at the Media Council of Kenya. So karibuni sana to all of you. And of course, before we continue, and of course, we also have a video of, even international journalists expressing how, they are feeling, how they are coping with the same. So before we take a look at that video and then come back with the discussion, Jeff Kaemba, let me just ask you very briefly, because you see, as a journalist, we're always advised there's no story that is worth your life. That is for sure. But at the end of the day, people need to get the information. And even right now, we've seen a lot of cases of information on social media. Some of them are very false. There's so much, surrounding COVID-19 as far as the infection, how the infection comes about. First of all, people are saying there is already a vaccine. It's just that we've not been told. Some people are saying this whole thing is a hoax. It's not true. So there's a lot of information here and there. So as a journalist, do you find it difficult to strike a balance between getting your information accurate and, of course, getting your sources, getting accurate information that you can pass out to the people, especially as far as figures are concerned? It might be very difficult for you to get the figures right.
Very sure. It is something that actually needs to be sorted out, because we even last time I did ask the Health Cabinet Secretary, that is Mutahi Kagwe, whether the county governments are allowed maybe to release information of maybe cases of the COVID-19. But then he said that at least to avoid all this confusion, at least we should have one particular center where the Kenyans can actually receive such information, because if at all each and every governor is now going to give out information, and then also at the end of the day, Mutahi Kagwe is also giving out information. So there will be some sort of conflicting, and Kenyans will actually get confused on what exactly is the number of the confirmed cases, a total, and then the number of the recovered, those Kenyans who have actually been healed at the end of the exercise, and then also maybe the number of the people who have actually died at the end of the process. But we do hope that even as this all goes on, for a journalist, indeed, it is very much difficult. Even you realize, even right now in the morning, some guys, they were calling me that, okay, we are actually quarantined persons at the KMTC center. So you are like, they were actually coverage. I cannot actually come to those centers.
Exactly. You want to, but then again,
it's not
somewhat scared.
Security officers are there. Even for me, my life is at risk. I cannot actually risk my life coming there, maybe mingling with you until you are tested. And even if you are actually tested negative, even if I'm very sure that, okay, this person has been tested negative and is negative, I would actually find it very okay to just mingle with the guy. Like yesterday, we were covering the case for the Catholic priest, Richard Odor. So,
he's
guys
been
were like,
negative, but
this guy has been tested negative. Now, should I go near him? You find it, you can't really take it 100%. But we all believe that until now, the government has actually tried to streamline. And for the Kenyans, there are so many bloggers also coming out with several versions.
Information.
How I wish that Kenyans do adhere to whatever media
is relaying
to them. However, at times, with the current situation, at times Kenyans believe more of whatever comes to Twitter as compared to the mainstream media, because they said that government is actually trying to hide some vital information.
So and that is a challenge, and of course we'll also want to hear Victor's sentiments on the same, where sometimes people don't actually believe what the media is relaying and choose to believe what some of the bloggers, which again you don't really know the source of information is from. All right, and of course various sentiments from journalists. Of course, those are journalists from South Africa, of course, just telling us how it is. And one person is saying, you know what, it's really difficult reporting on these numbers. And of course, you can remember South Africa went on a total lockdown. So some of them had to work from home. It's very difficult. And especially you have to be a mom, you have to be a wife, you have to be a sister, you have to be there, be present. But at the same time, you also have to work again, I mean, you have deadlines to beat, and we all know media is all about deadline, deadline, deadline. You have to beat your deadline. And the other person was saying, you know what, I mean, I am scared. Suppose look at the numbers in Italy, look at the numbers in the US. It's difficult if that's, you know, were the case in our countries. I don't know how we'll be able to handle this. And the other person, of course, so many other struggles as far as journalists are concerned. So, Victor, I want to get your sentiments on that before I ask Kaimba how he felt watching those videos. Can you relate, or what is happening? So, Victor, what do you say? I mean, how do you feel looking at all the journalists just expressing how it is working right now?
As our colleagues, the psychologists and from the medical field have told us, and other public health officers have told us, this is an extraordinary time, and we have to deal with it as an extraordinary thing. Psychologists have repeatedly told us, it's not the journalists who have a problem, it's the environment we're living in that has changed, and journalists must cope and pick to fit into the environment. That's one of the coping mechanisms that they must do. Two, as we are saying, all is not, as it were, to chase deaths. It's the decision of journalists on how to report. And the reporting is not just about death. The coronavirus pandemic is more than just a one disease thing. It's a public health matter. It's a public health issue, it's a political issue, it's an economic issue. And it's just how journalists must start adopting to that bigger thinking that yes, we are not abnormal. Working from home, having to report about death, is not itself the norm, because journalists have reported on other days. I mean, Baragoi, the terrorism attacks, road accidents, floods. So those are things that have happened. Have been happening. So, but the thing is, how are we prepared as professionals to deal with this? How are we looking at the environment as people who are going also to shape the public thinking and change the public narrative around what is happening in the country in the bigger picture, aware that, and this is something we have told journalists many times. When, for example, we are doing training for them on something like first aid, they always think they will be reporting about others dying. They never imagine that it can be a journalist who got an accident and needs to do first aid. So sometimes you act, like you mentioned, you have a child in the home, you have a cousin who can fall down and chokes, and you have to deal with them. At that level, it doesn't matter about whether you are a journalist or not. And that's what we are saying, that journalists must look at life more than just reporting and carrying a camera and doing what. That even what is happening from the many incidents we are seeing, the 80 people crumbling for a press conference, is we're telling you, keep social distance. Your life matters, but it doesn't see that the journalist is just preoccupied with the clip and the audio and the camera. He doesn't think of, but what will you report if you are dead? So there's no story worth your life. So that's what we are saying, that yes, report is difficult. Yes, we are not saying it's easy. It's something you must prepare. But like we said, journalism is not for the faint-hearted. That has been an idiom from our school, that journalism is not for the faint-hearted. But we also say you are not superhuman. Where you notice your weaknesses, where you have noticed you have reached your end level, you talk to psychologists, you talk to colleagues, you talk to fathers, and sometimes tell your editor that where I've reached, I can't report anymore. I mean, sometimes it's easier to talk about it. If you go to the mortuary and you get your own brother or your mother who is in the mortuary, would you have them cry like anybody else cries? You are a human being. So that's what we are saying, that yes, we are looking at you to give us the stories. It's a difficult environment, but remember, at the end of the day, you are a human being. You must take care of yourself. For example, safety starts with you, and you must live with the example. I was writing an article yesterday about, you are telling us to keep a distance, to put on masks, but when journalists go to cover the press conference at the ministry, they are not putting on the masks. They are not keeping the. So what perception should people take from you? So we must also remember you are role models. People are looking at what you are doing. Are you doing what you are announcing and writing to us, or are you just doing it for the sake of doing? So you have a bigger responsibility more than just writing.
Yeah, and you see, Victor, it can be difficult, I mean, to balance all those things, to be a brother, be a sister, be a cousin, be a mother, be a father, and then you also have to be a journalist at the end of the day. So I think for many journalists, we're struggling with balancing. I mean, finding or striking a balance between being a journalist and being a human being, I mean, at the end of the day, or being, let's say, a family member at the end of the day. So I think we just need to understand how then best do we strike that balance, again, because at the end of the day, we have deadlines to beat. But we also have families, family responsibilities as well. So I think we'll be looking at how then best can we strike that balance. And of course, Dr. Charity also advised, cases of debriefings, trainings as well for journalists, especially to handle what's happening in the country at the moment. So, and even the globe at the moment. So I think we'll also look at that. But for now, Dr. Charity, let me just come to you. Because you see, most of the time, journalists, again, who are in the front line to ensure that the people, the masses, the public at home, or the public rather, get all the information. Sometimes we're not able to deal with the situation, soak in, let's say the situation as it is. Even, for instance, for COVID-19, nobody prepared anybody, for COVID-19. This is something that just came and took the whole world at a standstill, if I can say that. So most of the people, some of us have not soaked in, what is happening and all that. So is this dangerous? And especially when reality sets in, is it going to be worse for so many of us journalists?
I hear you, and nobody was prepared for this pandemic.
Yeah.
And therefore, everybody engaged the fight-flight mode, and everybody is moving helter-skelter because mainly we are engaging emotional brain, not the thinking brain, when such a thing happens. And that is the normal for human beings, because when human beings feel a threat or perceive a threat, they will always want to save themselves by engaging the emotional brain.
Okay.
However, I think it's like Victor is saying, it is now about since the first case was reported in Kenya, and therefore, of course, the other parts of the world, they had their cases reported earlier, like we have seen in South Africa. However, it is good for media houses probably to reorganize themselves so that individual journalists or groups of journalists, depend on how they are working, get time to sit back and be able to reflect on what is happening, so that now that it is settling down, that this thing is here with us, like the CS Mutahi Kagwe has been saying, so that now we stop engaging the fight-flight, gear, and start engaging thinking and problem-solving skills, so that we can be able, because journalists are very key, and people believe in what the journalists are doing and are saying in society. And therefore, if journalists themselves are still on the emotional gear or the fight-flight mode, it is really going to affect many people in the society. So what I would say is that media houses provide a way that individual of journalists can sit back, reflect, strategize, so that they can be able to help the society deal with this thing. Remember, yes, they are fearing for their health and for their physical and mental, but also, especially for the mental health of the society, it is so much dependent on what the journalists report. And therefore, I'm saying need to sit back, reflect, move away from the fight-flight mode. Those who are not able to get out of that, media houses could help in stabilizing them. I keep saying that's where we are here as psychologists, professionals who can help people to stabilize their emotions and their thoughts.
All right.
Thank you.
You see, that sounds so easy. When you say journalists should at least try to move away from, the flight or fright, or sometimes that engaging, their emotional. I mean, it's sounds very easy, but at the same time, it could be difficult for so many. So I think we can also tackle then the how. How do we do it? Because during the day, let's say you are reporting on the same, you go home, you have to watch news as well as journalists, of course. So, of course, all this information comes to you. You sleep, you wake up in the morning, you go to work, you report on the same. So, like your whole, 24 hours, of course, you're surrounded by all the information as far as, COVID-19 is concerned, or whatever pandemic that we'll be dealing with. So then how do we somewhat distance ourselves from the same? And then Victor, I think, and I would want this Dr. Frida to chime in on this, where Victor, of course, talked about an aspect of sometimes if you feel you are at a position where you're too overwhelmed, you cannot, let's say, function properly, especially when you are covering, let's say, a pandemic, for instance, COVID-19. Let's say a certain member of your family has been infected. What do you do? How do you handle the same? Do you step back? But then again, if you then choose to step back, people are losing their jobs. So I think journalists are also having that fear that what if I take a little bit of break? What if I lose my job? So it's a lot. I mean, Dr. Frida, what do we do? I mean, yeah, how best then do we do this? I mean, do you just say, you know what, I am feeling overwhelmed, I need a break, but then again, there's this other side of you know, risking your job. So then what do we do, you know, when we're caught up in this situation?
So, thank you. So I think that the first thing we have to all remember is that there will be life after COVID.
Okay.
And that's very important. Because we can, like Victor said, sometimes you just get in the job, there's that sort of, you get caught up in the moment, you just want to cover the news story, you want to, because there's a deadline, you want people to get to stay informed and all that, but you have to remember, you have to protect yourself, because it will be great if we have all this news and we're staying updated. But it will be sad that we will be watching a video or we'll be watching a news clip of a journalist that is no longer with us because they did not take the protective measures to keep themselves safe. They still have an obligation to themselves and their family to be able to keep themselves safe.
Safe as well, yeah.
With that said, it's what you're basically talking about is basically grief. Grief meaning that we're already worried that I have someone who's sick and I still have to do my job. I don't have the luxury of actually just quitting because I have a loved one who's sick. But we have to also remember what are we actually bringing on the table? Can we actually show up 100% when we're worried about something else? We're worried about a sick person who is at home. We have to be realistic, and we have to, and our employers need to actually be empathetic and have that aspect of what do I expect from my employers during this period. And I think, like Charity said, it's important for employers to see what is it that we can do for these employees to make it easier for them to do their job. And trust me, I use easy very loosely because I know it is not. In this period, it is not easy. But we also have to be aware that it's okay to take a break. And I'll use myself as an example. If after session, and I am feeling overwhelmed, I actually just walk out of my office and sit outside. I sometimes just walk and talk to my colleagues, and just to sort of get out of that space so that I can come back refreshed to be able to actually deal with the next client and be present for them.
Yeah.
So it is okay for a journalist to take that break and even just talk to your other colleagues. See, when Charity said that sometimes it's good to have a group of people, it's because we all experience the same thing, but we also sometimes experience it differently. But talking to other people and hearing that they are also anxious, that they are starting to feel depressed, that they're having nightmares, then you sit and you're like, I'm not the only one. And so you feel like you're part of something, and that's very, very important. And it also boosts the morale of the group as well. So that's very important. But I think for me, the most important thing is remembering there is going to be life after COVID. And so we have to be very careful in how we are conducting ourselves every day.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Frida. All right, Kaimba. You see, there's an aspect of that balance where you have to balance between informing the public and stirring fear. All right, because I remember even in one of our meetings right here at EBRU, we were trying to find a way to, yes, report what is happening, but then again, not to stir fear, where we report on too much death, we report on too much information of people being infected and not focusing on the number of recovery. So are you struggling again with the same in terms of, yes, inform the public, but do not stir fear? But then again, if we do not make people understand how serious the situation is, they might end up being, complacent and relax and not follow the regulations. So do you Do you find it difficult?
I think it is very much difficult because yesterday I think I was with one of the viewers for Ebro, and he said that, okay, I do love your channel,
Yes.
but at times, you people of the media do scare us a lot.
Yes.
Every now and then you splash with a lot of news. Okay, one person has died, three people have died, every now and then. So what I've actually decided by now, the moment it reaches 9 p.m.,
I do
switch
not
off.
watch news.
Switch
Yes,
off.
I've had people say that as well. Yeah.
So at least to reduce that kind of scare. But for a journalist, we just have to do. We have to inform the members of the public.
Of the public as well.
However, even as we as Zebra, at least we have tried to balance stories at times. We mix stories so that at least we have viewers who might not actually be comfortable with the COVID stories.
Yes.
This is okay, COVID stories for me, I've consumed enough. By now, wacha tu nipate penye iko. So it's really tough.
It's tough.
For my case, last time when they said that, okay, we're members of the parliament, the 17 members of the parliament actually controlled the virus.
Allegation,
I don't know, the same week, I was actually, had met one of the members of the parliament.
Yes.
Who was alleged to be part
How
of
was
the
that for
17.
you?
I was like, oh my God. So I had to call the member of parliament, kamwambia, mheshimiwa, ebu niambie, kunaenda aje? Are you okay?
Have you been tested?
Have you been tested?
Yes.
To the extent the members of the parliament had to send me the results.
Okay.
Okay, boss. Stop relying on the bloggers who are actually trying to malign us.
Yeah.
So it's not that easy.
Yeah,
the moment you are said that, okay, you have controlled the virus, it's not easy. And furthermore, life in quarantine. You remember the story that we did the other day?
Yeah.
It's not that easy. Staying in it's like more of being in custody for 14 days. And the government says that, okay,
You have
we are
to
going
stay in for 14
another
more
14 days.
Yes.
Then, according to the CS, if at all you have stayed there for 14 days, you have been added another 14 days. Then before this 14 extra time elapses, one of you is actually identified, is tested to be positive, you again start afresh.
To stay in. Yes.
You start afresh.
Yeah.
So it's not easy.
It's not easy. All right, and Victor, I'm pretty sure you had that, where, of course, you have to interact with some of these newsmakers, because at the end of the day, you need your sources.
Exactly.
And you need your sources to be right. And, and that aspect of fear, is he not, is she not, and sometimes it could be difficult. Someone might decide, you know what, no, I'm not interacting with these people. Let me just take a step back. But at the end of the day, then what happens to your story, So, Victor, then how best do we do this? And of course, remember, like I said, Dr. Charity had, that aspect of we need trainings, and especially for all journalists, to cover, or how best they can cover the pandemic, because you can remember, we're not all like in the medical sector, and I can use this example of COVID-19 right now. We're not health professionals, so really there's some terms, there's some things that probably we might get wrong here and there, and that again might end up misinforming the public. So then how best do we do this? And of course, as Media Council of Kenya, do you think this is something that can help many journalists out there, and especially covering COVID-19?
And the thing we are doing, and I like the discussion, because those things Jeff is saying are the real things. Those are the case studies that you are being told your source is likely to be positive.
Yeah.
How do you react? How do you deal? And that's how what we are talking about. Your sense, journalists must be present in their work. The issue of going to work and your mind is on your rent, on other things, and you are not present, so that even when you are sitting there and you are not observing social distance, you are not aware, is one of the problems. Self-awareness, that let's be present. When we are going to the Bagadi, Kenyatta, or going wherever, the ministry and the president, let's be aware, let's be sensitive that we are part of Kenyans, we are human beings, and people care, and we must care about our lives. So that's one thing, that we must be present, self-awareness. The second thing that is coming through from colleagues, even we are not turning journalists into health professionals. We are not saying you must become doctors and health professionals.
Yeah.
You are journalists and remain being journalists. Just remain, do your work. So that also helps you in understanding in why you should talk to professionals to help you understand and write on some things. So that again becomes an issue of how many sources do you have and where. because a number of us also want to write fiction in the name of stories. And then we depend on very unverified sources of news to write. If somebody is saying Victor is positive, according to who? So that we must also ask ourselves that as journalists, it's not police officers, it's not media council, it's not to announce the death and positive of people. That's purely somebody's work. So that when you hear somebody saying so and so is positive, refer to your sources, your medical colleagues, your sources at the ministry, at Emory, at the influenza center to help you then synthesize information that you share to people, because people depend on journalists to understand some of these things. So when journalists reduce themselves to just merely pipelines of just producing and reproducing information to us, then we are failing. So we would rather tell us one point we understand than reproduce to us so many things that we are picking from elsewhere, from even unverifiable sources, than just feeding us. So we're also suffering from information overload. So we want to, a number of people are going to mainstream media, that's Liberty Media, the Ebru TVs and others, to confirm some of these fears and rumors from other unknown sources. So you have a bigger responsibility to ensure that you verify your information before you throw it out there. Then the other thing, yes, it's important. Media Council actually is doing trainings, but one of the things that it has, and I hope this experience will help journalists appreciate, is that when from 2012 August, when there was the Tana River massacre, when 56 people were killed in Tana River, and then when we started doing trauma counseling for journalists, people thought to go for trauma counseling, you are abnormal, it's a mental case. And I remember when we wrote the first email to newsrooms that we need you to nominate journalists who are exposed to Baragoi. I remember Baragoi, Mpeketoni, Garissa. I remember all those things. We were unable to get even 2-3 journalists to attend those sessions because people think journalists are superhuman. They cannot be affected, which is a very wrong impression. True is to appreciate the fact that social welfare, social being is not being abnormal or mental case. It's purely you have been exposed to an environment that has upset your way of doing things, and when you go for the briefing, it helps you to cope. There's nothing abnormal about it. Social counseling and the rest is not abnormal. So let's journalists accept this to be, and I'm aware a number of media houses like Nation Media Group, Standard Media Group, Media Max have actually these services for their reporters, but rarely do the reporters go for these things. Then the other thing, like you mentioned, is that we're already doing virtual, and I'm happy I've known now other colleagues, Dr. Frida and Charity. We have been actually running trauma counseling webinars for journalists since last week. Every Wednesday from 11 to midday, we are running this thing jointly with the IZ. We remember our 14 colleagues in Kilifi who had been exposed and they were in 14 days quarantine. They needed trauma counseling. So we have done 2 sessions. Next week on Wednesday, every 11, you can. So we are doing this thing aware that this is a problem. We are not. We are not. But the other thing is that with the help of Open Society, we are starting programs around public health reporting. We will be giving journalists stipends and grants to do stories, not in addition to Corona, but in addition to the public health, other issues, the stigma, the other things that are related to this thing. So yes, we acknowledge as Media Council that this is a bigger problem that we must intervene in a small way with the others to make a contribution. But it's also a learning lesson for us. Nobody, like you said, was prepared, but we are doing the little we can.
All right. Okay, Victor. So we need to take a very short break, but of course, when we come back, I'd also want to ask you the aspect of sometimes some sources are very difficult. It's very difficult to actually get them to go on record because, there's whole aspect of government censorship and all those things. So then what do we do? I mean, as journalists in this particular, incidents, because again, at the end of the day, we need to pass out the correct information to the masses. So I think we'll get your feedback on that after this very short break. Dr. Charity and Dr. Frida, please stay with us. Of course, we'll be right back after this very short break with more as far as mental wellness is concerned, especially for frontline workers. So stay with us. All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. Remember, again, we're live, and this is New Day. Of course, our focus today is on mental wellness, especially to the frontline workers. And we're talking about journalists. We have police officers. We have health workers as well. So if you're watching us at home and probably, want to chime in to the discussion, feel free to do so. Or 791-478990 is the number to call through, or send us a text message on 40920. And of course, we'll be looking at your questions, concerns in just a bit. But of course, remember my guests today. We have Dr. Frida Kamiti. We also have Dr. Charity Waithima. Both of them are psychologists, and we also have Victor Bure, who is a programs manager at the Media Council of Kenya, and not forgetting our very own Jeff Haemba, our senior reporter right here at Ebru TV. And of course, before I wrap up with journalists and how best we do this, and of course, we also have to focus on other professions as well. So let me just talk to you, Dr. Charity, very briefly. Of course, we said there's life after COVID-19, and for most people, they'll be like, most of them might actually not have a chance to go for either debriefing or get a chance to just talk about how they are feeling and all those things. So during this particular time, until let's say the end of COVID-19, because we're not too sure when it will end, and all those things, what are some of the steps that we can take? I know you talked about an aspect of just talking to each other, and try as much as possible and let it out instead of keeping it in. But then again, for those people who, let's say, do not have the luxury of time or resources, in all those things to ensure that they keep themselves sane during this particular period, what would you say? What do we do? I mean, do we also transfer this to our family members at home? Because it's very easy for us to talk to our family members as well, as far as what is going on in us. But then again, we do not want to stress them from the same. So what do we do?
Okay, thank you. I think, like we're saying, and I like the way Eric has explained, that the Media Council has put strategies in place to be able to take care of the mental health of the journalists. This is very good, and they are demystifying issues of mental health to the journalists. And you have asked, what do we do? What the media houses and individuals need to do, sometimes if you transfer that to your family, who may already be having other stressors, it may not be good. And sometimes you may find issues of displacement and projection, family members reacting negative to each other because of what you're taking home. What do you do? I think there is so much volunteerism that is going on. I know that even as therapists or counselors and psychologists, there is a way we are supporting the frontline workers who are dealing with or responding to COVID-19. And therefore, I'm sure Victor and, the Media Council and Psychologists Association, they have people who individual journalists can call and have virtual debriefing, which may take a very short time and may not cost a lot.
Okay.
Or if media houses could engage specific psychologists so that they can be able to be having debriefing sessions that are confidential with the journalists that are in the front line. That would work because, again, we don't want to burden the family, and individual families function differently, and you might find issues of displacement. We must take care of the mental health issues of every member of the family that belongs to a journalist as we take care of the journalist. So let people use the channels, media houses. You can engage a psychologist who will be debriefing the journalists who are in the front line instead of waiting for them to have a mental breakdown. And like we said, there is life after. We do not want journalists with the mental breakdown and physical illnesses after COVID-19 is gone.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Charity, for that. And of course, Victor as well talked about an aspect of, debriefing, and of course, for journalists, of course, which is being conducted virtually. So, Victor, thank you very much for that. Of course, remember, like we said, we're not only focusing on journalists. We also, talking about other professions. We're talking about healthcare workers. We're also talking about the police officers as well. So, thank you very much, Victor. I have to let you go. But of course, take a look at this video where we'll be be talking about the healthcare workers and how they are handling cases of COVID-19 and how they are coping with the same. Oh gosh, that is just so difficult to watch. It's just I don't know. But yeah, so that is the situation like. I mean, and those are some of the nurses who just come forward and say, you know what, it's very, very difficult. And I just want to get our psychologist's, view on the same. And of course, I'll start with you, Dr. Frida. What do you make of that? I mean, I don't know what to say, but what do you make of that?
You see that, it breaks your heart. It will be hard not to feel some type of emotion.
Yeah.
When you see that person breaking, this is someone who, has chosen to actually give her best to be able to save lives. And we have to empathize with the frontline workers. These are people who are seeing a lot of human suffering day in, day out. Not to mention now they're working longer hours than they used to work before.
Yeah.
Some of them probably have chosen not to go home until this is over so that they can keep their families safe. So that isolation for them already causes a lot of will cause depression, will cause anxiety, just really not knowing what the future brings, not knowing, am I also, as I take care of others, am I also going to be the next person that gets sick? So for me, when I look at someone like that, I think about what in our line we call the grief process. First there's that denial that, oh my God, we have so many patients who are admitted. And then there's that anger. I'm trying my best. I am working overtime. I'm trying to maintain safety. I'm trying to make sure everybody's safe. I'm trying to save my patients. I am tired. I haven't slept for a long time. So then there's that anger. We're not having enough, protective equipment. So then anger kicks in, and then you start bargaining. That's the stage where we start bargaining that when this is over, I will love my friends, my family more. I will spend more time with others. I will do A, B, C, D. And then you also now get into depression, especially when you start seeing patients dying. I think the last time I checked, I think we had about 10 people. That is still, it is a small number, but it is going to get bigger. And so there's that depression that kicks in. And I think it's going to take some time before the frontline workers can actually come into acceptance that this is the reality of things. And so you're going to see a lot of those emotions, the tears, the anger, the frustration, depression. And the thing about frontline workers that we have to also be aware of is that majority of what they do is they have delayed emotion or delayed reactions. So they're just popping in, doing their job out. So it's almost like they shut down that part of them that has to feel so that they can do their work. So then you'll see months later when this is all over, we'll start to see even an increased symptoms of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. And people might wonder, why are we seeing this yet the pandemic is over?
Yeah.
That happens a lot of times when we actually have these kind of things happening. Because frontline workers, policemen, doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, journalists, they sort of have to shut down so that they can actually get their job done. So that delayed reaction eventually catches up later. And that's why we see some of these symptoms. And I think, like Victor was saying before he left, that journalists have to seek help now, not until, because they might feel like, oh, this is just part of my job. So I'm not really feeling anything. This is just normal. And that explains why most of them don't actually seek help.
Sure.
And so, like, part of what we're doing as a foundation is we have a helpline for people to actually call in. You can talk to someone who will answer your questions, who will listen to you, because with social isolation, I was talking to people about, we assume that people are always isolated in families. What about those people who live alone?
Yeah.
They're isolated alone. They don't have someone to talk to. So we have a helpline that people can call in, that they can talk to someone and they can share their fears, they can share their worries. And that's very important. So yeah, I have to let you know that 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 video of that lady is just one of the millions
Yeah.
that we're gonna keep seeing until this actually comes to an end.
Yeah, and you see, for many health workers, and especially, I mean, the frontline health workers, for most of them, you see, most people consider them as a source of or a beacon of hope, you know, in some sort, because at the end of the day, you have to be there, you have to attend to this patient, you have to assure them that they will be okay. And in the event, I mean, from what the lady was saying, you go out and you come back and your patient is gone. And you don't know, I mean, what happens? You are with this person a few minutes ago and then you come back, the person is not there anymore. They have to inform the patient's families of, let's say, the patient's demise. So it's, and you have to be strong while doing that. And from what Dr. Frida is saying is most of these people sometimes have to just shut down, you know, whatever is happening and focus on their job. So Dr. Charity, I mean, what do you say of all this?
Okay, like Dr. Frida has said, you know, the health workers, especially because we've talked about the journalists and other frontline workers who are responding to COVID-19 situation, we find that many times people go to become medical caregivers because they have a helping spirit. And it becomes very difficult for the medics or the healthcare givers to just dissociate with the members. They are supposed to keep distance and they love helping people. And that's why you saw, even as that nurse was talking, this is what she likes doing. But now there is a dissonance somewhere because what she loves doing, the environment or the situation is not allowing her to do it the way she would love doing. Of course, it leaves someone with a feeling of depression, a feeling of self-guilt. And then she is seeing, or they are seeing some of their members. As of yesterday, I think I saw there were 14 healthcare givers that were in I think quarantine or isolation due to probably they have been exposed. And sometimes you'll find that their colleagues that they have left, they may suffer from what we call a survivor's guilt. They're wondering, how comes we handled a patient or I'm handling patients, yet my friend or my colleague is now in isolation or is in quarantine.
Yeah.
So all these things they are going through. And we need to know, just to add on to what Dr. Frida has said, apart from the depression, the anxiety, and all these things that are coming in, what they are going through might trigger underlying issues. There may be healthcare givers that have a bipolar that has never expressed itself, or even depressive disorders or anxiety or whatever else. And because of what is happening, that might trigger some of the underlying mental health and physical health issues. And therefore, what we need to do, like we have said with journalists, is again be there for them. Encourage them that they are not superhuman beings. Encourage them to speak. I wish we would have a way, and I know the Ministry of Health is doing everything, and even private hospitals, to have psychosocial support so that after you have worked your hours of duty, that you have someone to talk to, that you have someone who can also call your family to reassure them that sometimes you have to work and be away for their own sake so that if you get exposed, you don't go to expose them. I have been supporting one of the groups of, an organization that has been having people in quarantine. And one thing I discovered, sometimes the frontline caregivers are more worried about their families, and their families are more worried about them. And so I found it so good to even ask the person that have been directly asked to help, how is your family doing? And sometimes they've given me numbers of family members that are not coping by the fact that this frontline worker or healthcare giver is away from them. And so also stabilizing the family is going to help. And like Dr. Frida has said, and I've said, there are so many of us who are willing this time to offer our services to support, especially the frontline caregivers. We know they are sacrificing and putting their life online for our sake and for the sake of this nation and globally for the sake of the world as we all join hands to deal with this COVID-19 situation. So I think let's encourage, and probably through the media houses, the frontline workers, the nurses, the doctors, and everyone else who is a medic, and probably even the police and all these other people, together with the journalists, they can know that there are people who are willing to support them and their loved ones. Because after this situation, we do not want as helpers or as psychologists now to be overwhelmed by dealing with people who have developed mental health issues that were triggered by the fact that people repressed or did not speak about what they were going through.
Okay. All right, Dr. Charity, thank you very much. And I'll take that as your parting shot because our time is far much spent. And then I'll take your parting shot to Dr. Frida as far as, then the healthcare workers, because like I said, some of them, and like you said as well, that some of them tend to shut down, deal with the situation, try as much as possible and be present and be there for the patients, assuring them. But then again, in the event that, let's say, they lose someone, of course, there's that aspect of guilt. I did not do enough to help this person. What am I going to tell their family members and all those things? So as far as just dealing with, all forms of feelings that probably they might have, what is the best way then to go about it so that at the end of the day, you do not wait until the pandemic is over for them to actually start soaking in what had happened? And then, of course, so that we don't see cases of depression, anxiety, disorders, and even, sometimes suicidal thoughts or cases of bipolar or PTSD as well.
So thank you. I think the first thing that healthcare workers and frontline workers have to remember is, as much as every day they're seen as heroes, they are human beings.
Yeah.
That is who they are first, and then their profession comes in second. And so, if someone, like I always tell my clients, if you need to break down and cry, then that is very okay to do that. If you need to talk to someone, then that is also okay to do that. You see, we always expect people to react the same when they lose someone. We expect them to cry, we expect to see them sad and all. But then there are people who actually grieve very differently. So does that mean that that person who is not crying, that person who is not screaming, does that mean that that person does not feel the pain of losing a loved one? No, we all grieve differently, and that is very okay. The first thing I will say is that I'm hoping that as they continue to work, every day there is a debriefing. They are talking to someone. They are talking to a supervisor who is able to help them sort of debrief their feelings. They discuss what they're feeling, and also to normalize this situation for them. You did the best that you could, given what you have. And you tried your best, but we still lost a person. And it is not your fault. Understanding that that is not their fault, that is very important. And this can come from a person who is outside and who is rational, so that they can be able to support this person. And also, but the biggest thing is offering empathy to this particular person. Because sometimes someone can come and tell us all these good things. It's not our fault. We did the best that we could and everything. But it's okay sometimes to just let them sit with those feelings so that they can actually process them out. Because sometimes we come from a culture where we tend to be told, manna, that's life. There's nothing you could have done. So unfortunately, this is not the time to start telling someone to manna. So if they need to cry at that instant, they need to cry. If they need to process what they're feeling, that is the moment to process what they're feeling. And also, I'm hoping that they're provided that environment, the safety of knowing that they can actually grieve. And it's very normal to have such reactions. And like I think Victor was saying before, that they're human beings. And so if we see them crying, if we are seeing videos and pictures of, frontline workers breaking, falling apart, having, a nervous breakdown, and it will be very difficult. In fact, in my view, I would worry about someone who I see not having a reaction. That is something that I would be worried about. Or somebody who tells me, oh, well, that's normal. I had a professor who told us the first day in school, if you ever get to a point where you hear a sad story and it doesn't touch you in a certain way, then it's time to change careers.
Okay.
And I think that is something that I would, absolutely, that is something I would also say for frontline workers. Even the administrative police that I sometimes work with, if you get into an accident scene and it doesn't break your heart to see people dead, then I think it's time to change your career. When all is said is, there is hope.
Okay.
We are there, like Charity said, there are so many of us that are there to just provide a listening ear, that are just there for someone to talk to, for someone to just tell you that it's okay. That eventually, no matter how long this takes, eventually this is going to come to an end.
Yeah.
To normalize the situation for these people.
Okay.
And that's very important for them to remember that.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Frida, as well, for your sentiments. We really, really appreciate your time. So Dr. Frida Kameti and, of course, Dr. Charity Waithime, both are psychologists. Thank you very much for making time for us just to speak to us on how best we can support each other, especially for frontline workers to cope, especially during this pandemic, and that is on COVID-19. So thank you so much to both of you, and please stay safe, wherever you are, with your families and with your friends. So let's just finish up with our very own Jeff Kayemba. Kayemba, so we've learned a lot, from Victor, from our psychologists, as well, as far as, what it's okay to express how we are feeling, where we are at emotionally, and don't take, I liked what our psychologists say, it's not normal, like, especially during this pandemic, where we as journalists, it's very easy for us to think, oh, well, this is just part of my job. I am just doing my job, but we don't know how this is affecting us, in emotionally and all those things. So for you, moving forward, what are you going to do in terms of just to ensure that you do not let this affect you in one way or the other? Because so many people are looking up to you. I mean, some people, I'm pretty sure, have come to you and asked you, hi, but I hear this and this and this is going on. Is it true? Is it not? Your family actually depend on you to give them the right information, but you also have to be there present, physically, emotionally as well. So it's a lot for one person to carry. So very briefly, what would you say moving forward as journalists? What can we do?
I think from the onset, we have actually been trying to adhere to all the protective measures against COVID-19. And with the engagement that we have actually had with the Daktari and the psychologist, together with Victor Bwira, it is actually going to help us a lot in terms of protecting ourselves from this COVID-19. And it really hurts. With the media industry the way it is, if indeed this COVID can actually strike one of us, it's likely to spread very much. So how I wish all the media personnel in the country do adhere to all the measures, at least to not to spread. And also the health workers, remember that I do feel for them. At times a patient maybe knows very well that, okay, I do have a virus, but he or she doesn't actually tell the doctor that, okay, I have such kind of conditions. So the doctor goes on to treat you, but at the end of the day, you actually contracted the virus, not knowing. So it's a big challenge. One of the cases that we were covering, one of the patients who had actually traveled from India, I understand that the kid was actually a positive, but she didn't actually tell the doctors that, okay, my child had a travel history. Only ending up to infecting some of the doctors at the Kenyatta National Hospital. The same to one of the the priest also. Okay,
And
anyway,
ended up infecting
as a
so
man
many
of God,
people.
I don't know whether it was ignorance or, but all in all, we leave it upon God
It
to
will
judge.
be, yeah. Plus, it
Exactly.
will be okay. I mean, the pandemic, there's life after COVID-19. Let's just
Exactly,
say
and
that.
we hope it will end.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Jeff, as well, for coming by, just sharing your experience with us as far as just COVID or covering COVID-19 is concerned. And I'm pretty sure that, of course, you're taking all the necessary measures to ensure
Exactly.
that, again, you are protected as well as your family. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very much. And of course, thank you so much for staying with us as well until the end of the show. I believe that you've learned a lot, you've grasped a lot from our psychologists, from Victor, from Khemba, as far as just all the frontline workers and how they're coping and dealing with cases of COVID-19. So that tells you that this is a collective effort. We should all try as much as possible, adhere to the directives so that, again, we do not put the lives of so many health workers out there at risk. And of course, we can remember earlier on, of course, we had a KQ plane actually landing in today with medical equipment from China. And the people receiving, of course, the medical equipment include Interior CS, and that is Dr. Fred Matiang'i. We also have the CS for transport, and that is Masharia, and not forgetting our health CS, and that is Mutahi Kagwe as well. They were there to receive the medical equipment. And Mutahi, of course, just gave a brief over there, and he said, Kenya has confirmed 12 more COVID-19 cases, and of course, bringing the total number to 246, and 5 of them are hotel workers. Of course, that is coming up on our 1 p.m. news in very few minutes from now. But I have to say goodbye. This has been New Day. Thank you so much for staying with us on behalf of an amazing, amazing team who put together this show. Of course, we wish you a lovely day ahead, and stay safe and God bless. And of course, remember to adhere to the directives that has been put aside by the Ministry of Health. So God bless, enjoy your weekend, and remember to stay home and stay safe. Goodbye for now.